Hi, this is Devin Thomas at PromaxBDA. We're here with Kasumi Mihori, and she is a creative director with Troika. So we wanted to ask Kasumi some questions about personal branding. And one of the first questions I have for you is, how would you describe your own personal brand?
My own personal brand. It's built over, I think, many years. I think first and foremost, when you kind of start in the industry, for me as a designer first was all about the work. So that really defined what my brand was becoming. But after a while, when you kind of leave design and either go into strategy or other categories, it eventually becomes about your relationships. And so for me now, in this stage of my career, is really about how I forge those relationships. It's still about the work and building teams, but it's really about relationships, both externally and internally within the company. A lot of work outside of work, I think, is keeping connected with people. Networking is a huge part of it, but it's really about also establishing a work ethic. For me, my personal brand is really tied into that. So there's just certain processes and ways that I work and ways that I connect with people that hopefully become part of just my reputation and part of my personal brand.
How would you say having a personal brand has helped you in your
I think
career?
it's still the foundation for me is still in the ethics, so it's kind of the discipline and the way you actually achieve the work or achieve the goal or solve the creative problem. And everybody works in different ways. But for me, part of the personal brand is making connections, making sure that artists feel safe, when they work and actually create the creative, and clients as well. So creating that safe environment is actually part of my work ethic, and it becomes part of my personal brand too.
Why is it important to discover and develop your personal brand as you grow into a leadership position?
I think it's really also about having a point of view. So everyone's personal brand should really represent what they believe in. So both within the industry and even outside the industry. So when I look at young executives or young artists kind of coming up in the ranks, one of the questions I always have for them is, what are they interested in and what are they passionate about? I think that's also how you stay authentic to your personal brand is you have to have a point of view. You have to have a point of view in the world, and you have to have a point of view about your work.
And so that ties into, just some other questions I have, like what makes a personal brand unique?
I think it's the point of view.
Okay.
I think you really have to not be afraid to stand for something. So even if it's controversial, but what are you personally interested in? All those things will automatically become authentic if it really comes from within, as opposed to trying to put on some kind of image or air, to get a job or to get ahead, or it's really about what you believe in. And I think that authentically actually comes through in the work. You know it when you see it.
And what sorts of things do you recommend up and coming leaders to do to build their own personal brand?
I think, again, like when somebody's building an online portfolio or blogging or basically trying to establish what their identity is, it's, again, like putting forth what you're just, intimately passionate about. So it doesn't have to do with necessarily entertainment or sports or the industry. I think it's important just to put out there what you love to do. So it could be fine art, it could be photography, it could be something outside what your core kind of competency or skill set is, but it's just more of an inside view on who that individual is, which I think is extremely important. For me, it's really about understanding the people that I like to work with, whether they're writers or editors or designers or producers. I love to understand how they think and how they actually attack a problem and how they problem solve. So part of that is knowing what this individual is passionate about outside work. I think that's incredibly important. And that's part of the personal brand.
And that leads me to my next question, which is what tools are critical for business leaders to use to stand out in their personal brand exposure
for
strategy?
me, I'm a little bit more old school
Okay.
because I'm older. But I think LinkedIn is still a really, really great way to kind of put your professional presence out there. Personally, it's really having a very strong kind of like online portfolio if it's really about the work. Obviously, everyone's loving to Snapchat and Instagram and having even Tumblr sites still. So having all of those kind of sites built up as well. But it's really about putting the work kind of first and foremost and out there in an innovative way. So that's still the first place that I go, is obviously to look at people's reels and portfolios.
Okay, and would that also include maybe Twitter or other?
I mean, it does, but again, I'm more interested in the way the actual person is face to face as opposed to how they are, kind of out there in the ether, because it's a persona. And for me, if we're talking about being authentic,
Right.
It's literally about having some kind of personal connection with that artist or that writer or that producer. They have to be able to bring something to the table, in person, not just digitally.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be a human connection there.
What is your persona online, and what does the social media landscape look like? So how would you say your persona is?
I mean, for me, it's still all about the work. It's not, I keep all the personal stuff to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So for those that are kind of, have been friends with me for a really long time or colleagues with me for a really long time, know a little bit more about my personal life. But my LinkedIn persona and everything that's out there digitally is very curated. So, and that's on purpose, so I'm not as much of an exhibitionist as maybe, other people are. So it's more about, again, I'd rather talk to somebody in person or meet them in person or pick up the phone and text message too, but it's more about having those more intimate kind of personal connections have actually taken me very far in business. So that's just the way that I authentically like to communicate, as opposed to putting like a whole bunch of stuff out there.
Okay, and that allowed you to network and help you to...
In my own way, yeah. I think using social channels is great. It's just not intrinsically who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not tweeting, and I'm not on Instagram, and I'm not Snapchatting all the time. But LinkedIn, I pretty much keep up to date just because it's a great way to connect and see what people are doing very quickly. Mm-hmm. But yeah, other than that, it's personal messages for me.
And how would you advise others on what their brand should look like in the public sphere?
I think it's really just about being, kind of passionate, and if you are comfortable with putting your personal kind of slices of your personal life out there too, other quadrants of your persona out there, then that's kind of up to the individual. But as a creative, it's always interesting to see what he or she is kind of super passionate about. I think passion and curiosity are the two things that go the furthest as far as like making an executive, in my mind, in the creative industry. So those two things intertwined will take you very, very far. That and a great work ethic.
And how do you encourage mentees to develop a personal brand and maintain one's authenticity?
I think if it's your own work that you're touting, it's automatically going to be authentic. I'm hoping. Yeah. So I think I have a mentee currently at Hulu, and so what I tell him is that it's really about not just getting the latest and the greatest work out there on your site, but it's also about kind of sharing, again, like what he's personally passionate about and curious about in the world, and it can be completely outside of his Hulu universe. But as a creative, what are you curious about? Are there things in the world that you'd want to change? It's never too big of a problem to solve. So how can we kind of solve it together and creatively? Those are the bigger issue things are things that are super interesting to me. And that's kind of what I look for when I look for team members to bring on into Troika that we like to work with. There are innovative thinkers, people who actually think outside the box, for real. So that's what I tell him, and I think he's starting to do it. So My personal brand was developed over many years of doing design. And I think certain clients, different networks, came to, at the time, Pittard Sullivan for that specific type of design. And then over the years, what I tried to do was translate that over into, again, type of process, type of work ethic that I would apply to the teams that I would be working with, either at Razorfish or at Pittard Sullivan or now here at Troika. I think a lot of it is about the way we approach problem solving and the way we approach the creative. And so it's imperative to kind of find people who will be completely open-minded to the process. That's how I started. That's how I was taught to design at School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, and I pretty much carried that kind of training all the way through. And hopefully I am applying it to more complex problems that we solve at Troika for brands.